Salvation is not beyond immediate learning. It only requires a moment of stillness in the mind. You have that moment of stillness, Francois, and then, like we were talking about in our last meeting, I think, or the one before that, through a moment of the mind being still, you're able to drop down like that and have an experience of direct union in light, a connection. Becomes a requirement, I guess, or a I don't know, because you have to find it. You have to find it by yourself. But there just becomes a determination not to listen to that internal dialogue. You know, that voice that tells you what clothes you're going to wear and what breakfast cereal you're going to have in the bowl and all of that crap. Identify that voice, right? Really identify it, look at it, and listen to it just for a second. Not give it validity, but to just realize that there's no answers there, right? Until you realize that it doesn't speak of anything that's helpful to you, you're going to continue to kind of subliminally allow it to chit-chat away in the background, right? You have to reach a point of determination. It's like looking at the world. It's exactly the same thing. You have to look with open eyes upon the world and see it as a place of death. Even the good stuff, Bali and Fiji and, you know, beautiful places, they're still just lipstick on a skeleton. They're still just death. Iceland, Tina and I are going to Iceland in a volcano and watch the sky erupt in green lava and stuff. It's still just death in a different form, you know. So in listening to your own internal dialogue just for a second, I'm not telling you to make a practice out of listening to it. You only have to listen to it properly once. You listen to that voice and you will realize there's nothing going on there. It's just blah, 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 right? But until you reach that conclusion for yourself, it doesn't do any good for me to tell you, right? You have to reach your own conclusions about it. It has to be your own holy cow, there's nothing going on moment, right? The light bulb has to come on for you, not because I tell you. Until you reach that conclusion yourself, you're not going to have the determination to refuse to listen. Okay? Now, that voice is not you. That voice is not your friend. Young Angela. Looks like we've just got her out of bed there. Got the whole hair thing, bed hair going on, looking lovely. All right, so it's important, Francois, when we do these meditations, we're going to do a mantra style meditation in a moment, and Tina's going to count them off on the beads, right? Each one. But before we do that, we're going to spend a moment just listening to that internal dialogue, trying to connect with that voice in there that's telling us all the sorts of things that we have to do and should do or shouldn't do and all this sort of stuff, but without becoming attached or engaged with that voice. Okay, so we're becoming like the observer of it. We're becoming the witness to that voice, but we're not allowing that voice to determine what it is that we do or what we're about. We're simply accepting, well, it seems to be there. Right? It seems to be there, and seems is the capital word here. It seems to be there, so I will seem to listen for a moment until I seem to realize that it offers me nothing. Remember, it's all an illusion. The ego is an illusion, right? It doesn't do any good to just say, oh, well, no, it doesn't exist. It's just a dream. Right? We've already given it a reality, which is why it seems to exist in the first place. I've already given it a meaning somewhere. It's the uncovering of the meaning I've given it that allows me to transcend it and to go beyond it. It's like, oh, I see, there's the meaning that I've given it. Now I can withdraw that meaning and refuse to listen to that voice. Now, the ego loves an audience. So when you refuse to listen to it, gradually it just sort of fades away to this very silent, almost nothingness. And the more you practice refusing to listen, the quieter and quieter it becomes as you automatically enter into stillness, right? Without any thought. One of the meditations that I used to practice very early on before I found the course was to imagine my thoughts, much like Jesus in, I forget the lesson number 16 or 14 or something, where he said, imagine your thoughts as an oddly assorted procession going by, right? I used to imagine my thoughts as a roll of old 35mm film, one after the other, after the other, after the other, but they're playing so fast that you can't see that there's a little black line between each of the frames on that film. But when you slow the film down, I used to practice in my meditation, slowing down my thoughts and trying consciously to think them very slowly, right? I didn't yet have the technology or the understanding that they had no power over me, but I did realize that I was somehow connected to them, even though that I didn't know they weren't real. They had no validity. And I would slow them right down until something would happen between my thoughts. It was like I could almost stop one thought and I could sort of see the peripheral edge of the next thought trying to appear in my mind. And something would happen, I would slip between, and I would, not very often, not like I do nowadays, but I would very, very occasionally, I would get a glimpse of light. I would get a little tiny flash of light, right? And I learnt that way of meditation. It wasn't really a meditation, or it wasn't called a meditation, but I learnt that way of meditation from a woman who was a hypnotist who was helping me with some stuff at the time. And I came out of that sessions with the hypnotist, actually, whether she was aware of it or not, with quite a powerful method of meditation, which worked for me for quite a long time. But of course, with all methods, they're temporary, right? Everything here changes, and the nature of mind to always corrupt eventually crept in, and the world took hold again. But I didn't have the miracle back then. So, Tina, you have beads there? You got your beads? Oh, you got 2 lots of beads? Tina's just going to play some music just softly. And we're going to have a recitation of nothing exists for each bead before you slowly move on to the next one. I want you to do these slowly. And as you pass from one bead to the next, allow the, how would you call this? The vibration or the harmonic of the thought that we're using, nothing exists, which was a divine thought given, or a divine idea given, the thought of God. Allow that to resonate until the recitation of the next bead. Does that make sense? So that there is no gap between one recitation of nothing exists to the beginning of the next one. So there's no place where you're waiting for the next one to begin. It's like a bell. You hit the bell and then you listen to the ring. Does that make sense? Tina, you're looking at me in a bit blank stare there. So when you say the word nothing exists, right, with every bead, that frequency or that, I never know how to put this. Frequency is probably the only way I can put it. The frequency of that word or the resonance of those words stays with you as a kind of an echo or a resounding until you say it again. Otherwise, what happens is you'll say nothing exists, and oh, look, the sun's coming up. Nothing exists. Oh, and there'll be other thoughts that'll try to interfere. I want you to try and stay with nothing exists. Focus on it and allow it to be resonant until your mind is disturbed by the next recitation of the bead. Okay, close your eyes, Tina. Find the king bead there on the... We'll just do a little practice, okay? And you can say it out loud. You're on mute. You'll have to take that off mute.
Nothing exists, right?
Yeah, nothing. Just say it slowly and calmly.
Nothing exists. Nothing exists. Nothing exists. Nothing exists. Nothing exists.
Right. Now, between each of those recitations, there's a very small gap. Right. Try to allow the harmonic of nothing exists to fill that gap.
Nothing exists.
It'll be slightly different for you because you're doing the recitation. But for everyone who's listening, stay focused. Okay. Tina has the added difficulty of having to actually move the beads, and so break concentration for an instant to move her thumb to bring the bead down. So, all right, when you're ready. We're going to spend just a minute before you do that. Francois, just sit for a moment with eyes closed. Angela, sit for a moment with eyes closed and listen to any thoughts that are in your head. Perhaps you're extremely good at meditation already and there isn't really any in there. Perhaps there's just a slight sort of echo of something that once was. There's always going to be something whilst you still have the ability to animate the avatar, whilst you still have the ability to use the body. There's still going to be something because the body is the symbol of the ego. So there's going to be some kind of frequency going on in denial. But for Francois, this whole little exercise right now is basically for you, okay? Sit and just observe. Try not to give the thoughts any value, meaningful or meaningless, crazy or good or anything like that. Just let them come and go. The only objective consideration that you might have for all of the thoughts together is that they can't provide you any answers. It's important you realize that. None of them mean anything. Good. Focus. Don't become engaged with your thoughts or you'll be distracted and your mind will start wandering. Good. During this exercise, it may not go in depth enough and it may not be long enough, Francois, to reach your own conclusion regarding your thoughts. But it's something that you can practice in your own time and do again and again and again. Just because we're in a Zoom meeting doesn't mean that this is going to be the place that realization dawns on your mind. At some point, it's already occurred. At some point in you, the fulfillment of God's promise is like a blazing light in your consciousness, and everything will line up to that. All these little lessons and practices and everything that you do will bring that about through the collapse of time, through the collapse of the alpha and the omega, to the place where you actually are, not located in time. But for this Zoom meeting, I just wanted to try and get a sense of observing thoughts rather than interacting with them, so you can realize the meaninglessness of them in the full extent of that. And then you will have a deeper understanding and a better understanding of how fruitful the mantra style meditation that we're about to do can be for you in helping you to still your mind to a perfect point of silence. And that will make more sense next week when we do the last 5 lessons, and where we have Jesus's words himself regarding that, where we do enter into silence. All right, Tina, you want to put on just some little music? And
You want some music? Okay.
well, I think that would be nice, don't you? Just a bit of...
I don't know. Let's see.
We don't have to have music, but we can.
Let's see if we can, if it's not so.
You know, I went to in Brisbane. They have a Taoist, I think it is, monastery there on the outskirts of Brisbane, and I went there once, and they were doing some kind of meditation. And there was like everybody from the community there, and a couple of the lay monks up the front who were conducting the service. And one of the monks had these 2 cymbals, and he just kept going bang.
Yeah. Oh, really?
Yeah,
I have them, but I can't.
Well, he was hitting them not in any kind of rhythmic sort of way. It was really at random. Sometimes he'd wait 5 seconds, and then sometimes it'd be like 20 seconds, bang. And anyone who was mind wandering, it would just totally jar them back. And it was like, and I was sitting there, I wasn't doing the meditation. I was sitting there, I was just a typical tourist, you know, and I was like just checking out the thing in general. I thought, how the hell are these people meditating today? Cymbals were so loud. They were just like...
I have the baby ones.
they're hard
to manage. All right, wait. Let me see. This is the...
All right. Take a few deep breaths. Just keep it low. Yeah, that's it. When you're ready, follow along with Tina. That's good.
Nothing exists. 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 Nothing exists.
Focus. Nothing exists. Nothing exists. Good. Andy. How did you go, Francois?
It just oh my gosh, as soon as I started the mantra, it was just lightning started.
Good.
It's still lightning,
Good.
just all over the place. Sorry, just whoa, whoa. Mm. And every time I go deeper, it just the lightning just keeps on.
Good.
Lightning. Oh my God! I'm on the dot. Mm.
Just remember, there's nothing to fear.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Tina's recording it, so you'll be able to go back and do that again. Use that. It only takes a few minutes. Meditation doesn't have to be for hours and hours, although entering into stillness. The purpose of meditation is to reach stillness. Once you're at a place of stillness and you discover that within yourself, your mind will really love it. Your mind, it'll feel natural to be still. And you won't need meditation per se as a way of staying in stillness. You will find it just becomes automatic and natural, and you will be able to enter into light. Meditation is only required to reach that threshold, to reach that place of stillness. And we call it meditation. It's really just a practice of listening, inner quiet.
Yeah, may I share? Yeah, just before we started with the mantra, the I could see while watching my mind, I could see the ego. I'm just gonna say for reference, the ego, the thoughts that came in were questions. There were no answers. And then second realization is it's all about the future or the past. It's nothing about that's all the thoughts, nothing about here now.
Good.
Yeah.
Job done then.
Oh.
There's a resonance with that particular mantra that nothing exists. That was the two words that was given to me in the Godhead when I left my body and awoke in eternity. God spoke to me, nothing exists, or the voice for God spoke, nothing exists. And that's been with me ever since. And it's not the symbolism of the words, it's the certainty and the origin of those words as the answer to my own personal inquiry about life, the universe, and everything. This truly is just a dream. This truly is just an illusion of a world. The real you, the real Francois and the real Dave and Tina and Kevin and Angela and Anna exist as created by God, as part of God forever and ever in the eternal state of spirit. When you enter into the light, when you leave the body or lay the body aside for a second or awaken from the body, however you want to talk about that as, you'll have no doubt that you're not the body. And it won't confuse you again. It'll never confuse you again. You'll never have another problem. You'll never be concerned about anything. Everything just falls into place as it's meant to automatically. It's like the piece of the jigsaw puzzle in the human condition that is missing is given back through the reactivation of that God memory. And then the whole picture can be seen. But without that one piece of the puzzle, there is always going to be that one piece missing. And you're never going to truly know the whole picture. You can guess at it and you can imagine it, but you're not going to know it. So that experience where you said there was lightning in your mind, I understand what that is. That lightning will become more of a glow, more of a calm, and like more of a sunrise, more peaceful and more warm as you process through the purification more and more and more. Initially, it's just like static. You get little flashes of light, little glimpses and crackling. And sometimes you'll hear voices like a radio being tuned in, an old-fashioned radio where you had to tune in for the station and you get like 10 things going on at once. And eventually you just hear one voice. And then you go beyond even that. There's no voice. The presence of God in you doesn't speak. The presence of God in you simply is. There are no words for that. Good. Any questions, anybody? Should we do it again, Tina? There's a nice meditative accompaniment you can find on YouTube there. Just type in 108 Om recitations.
Have that.
Oh, you have it?
I found it last. It's loud though. Let me see.
Oh, you don't have to play it so loud, just in the background a little, but.
The Om.
The 108 snails. That's what I always call them.
See.
Should always do them slowly, like a snail. Snail moves slowly and leaves a trail from one place it's at to the next, to the next, to the next. Probably a pretty nice analogy.
You want me to do them slower?
No, you just do them, have whatever feels comfortable to you.
Okay, so another 108. So here's the music.
Don't forget to breathe. Focus on your breathing.
Nothing exists. 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 Nothing exists.
Focus.
Nothing exists. 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 Nothing exists.
Breathe.
Nothing exists. Nothing exists.
That's good. Focus. Breathe. Good. All right. Good. It's better to practice your meditation, Francois, for a few minutes, like 10 minutes, with devotion and dedication than for a longer period and become continually distracted. If you find that you're becoming continually distracted, stop the meditation. Maybe go and have a drink of water, read a bit of a book or something, and then maybe try again later. Meditation is a useful tool. Meditation and prayer go hand in hand, really, and Jesus references them both many times through the course. They're the two, apart from the action of choice, they're the two primary means of dealing with the errant mind that you have. One through being an appeal to higher authority, and the other primarily is born of a willingness to receive guidance. The lessons that we're going to do next week are not only focused around entering directly into light, but also listening for guidance. And I remember once having the experience of practicing listening some years ago, and a question popped up in my head: how long would I have to listen for? And I heard the words spoken to me: you will have to listen for at least 8 minutes. And I thought it was quite curious that it was specifically at least 8 minutes. But that was where I was at regarding how long it takes me to truly enter into the deepest levels of silence where I can hear the voice speaking. I don't know how many minutes it is these days. It's not many, a minute or at the most, perhaps. But when I first started meditating, it was at least an hour to an hour and a half. And many times I would wander off or fall asleep during my meditation at the beginning. And I tried many different meditations, not really knowing what I was doing initially. The very first kind of meditation that I tried was with the Brahma Kumari when I was about 16 or 17. And it was an open-eyed meditation and a whole room full of people sitting around a candle. And I found that quite useful. That was very peaceful. It brought me a great sense of peace and connectedness, I guess, because everybody there in purpose. But the philosophy and theology of the sect or the people that were practicing didn't make any sense to me, and they didn't speak very good English. So I didn't stick with it for long. And I tried a lot of other different meditations between then to now. But each one should be seen ideally as perhaps a temporary mechanism, the method that you use, a temporary mechanism, because the ego will always corrupt everything you try to do as a religious observance or as a ritualistic observance, because the ego is the mechanism of ritual. So when you have a regular practice of meditation, you'll find that initially it will be helpful, and in the long term it seems that it's of little effect perhaps. And when that occurs, you need to ask within yourself, all right, show me what's next. Show me how to get beyond this place where I'm at. And then you'll have to listen for more guidance. I've had about 3, I guess they're profound to me, but to you guys listening, I don't know what they would come across as, but I've had 3 different things that have been revealed to me in the last 25, 30 years regarding meditation and regarding listening that have been perhaps things that I've been aware of but haven't been able to integrate into my own personal sense of using them. And one of those was the mantra meditation that we just did, or a very similar version of it. And another one with the last 5 lessons of the workbook, which we're going to do next week. And the very first one was, you've moved on the screen. The very first one, Francois, was with, when I first started to experience the light in my mind, it was slightly crackly and jittery. It was like an oscilloscope. You know what an oscilloscope is, where you have a line of light, and the higher the frequency, the more it jiggles around. So it was a bit like that in my mind, but not in a linear sense, more in a direct sense, like the light was coming directly at me. Or I was going towards the light, one or the other. I couldn't tell you which. And I was instructed not to do that particular meditation, and that was very clear. And I guess at that time I'd had no mind training, and that if I had have followed through with that particular meditation and had an experience at that time in my youth, it might have fried me beyond the point where I could have been useful at all to anybody. And I have met people that that's happened to. So your meditation, in a certain sense, does need to be guided. And if you're doing the workbook of the lessons, of the course lessons, then it definitely is guided. But also within that, you're always encouraged to listen to your own internal teacher, not just me and not just the lessons, but your own internal teacher regarding the application of each lesson. And Jesus quite often gives examples of telling you in those lessons that if you feel uncomfortable or strained, that you should stop. That's for a very good reason. Partly so that you don't become overly oblivious to your mind wandering, and also partly so that you don't activate some kind of light experience within yourself that you're not perhaps ready for. And there are many of those. You can have many kind of samadhi moments, I think they're called in Buddhism, where they're not quite enlightenment, but they're revelatory. Jesus calls them revelations or holy instants. And it is possible to force the hand of those experiences within your own consciousness by putting yourself into extreme situations. Extreme situations in a meditative sense and in a physical sense. And if you combine those two things, like Jesus going into the desert for 40 days and 40 nights without food, that's an extreme activity on the physical side of things, forcing everything to a head. And also, if you were to spend those 40 days in meditation, as probably he would have, meditation and prayer, an extreme example of that also. The mind is capable of a great deal of things and can propel you to all sorts of realities and different continuums and experiences of other dimensions and things like that. You have to remember that the entirety of creation is contained within your mind, and the entire script of the journey of the soul already written is also there. And it's possible for you to tap into it, but if you tap into it in an unguided sense, it's almost certain that you'll become lost or caught up in some kind of mental perspective regarding what you experience there that you'll find very difficult to shake when you come back here, when you find yourself back in the body here. So it's always better to use the Holy Spirit as your guide and to always ask, help me with this meditation, help me to do everything, because you have free will and nothing is offered in help unless you actually ask, because the law of free will is that it cannot be broken, which is why you have to ask. And I think I want you specifically to understand that, Francois, because you have a lot of determination about you right now, as all young people do. A lot of people who are very young, in fact, my daughter even, she's 14, she's starting to look at the world now. What's the point? You know, why? Why do we even do this? Why does it exist? And children younger than that, 10 and 12 years old, I've had discussions with, not very often, but discussions with regarding that. And their parents sometimes bring them to see me, and my son or daughter is having trouble and blah, blah, blah. And it's quite easy for me to talk and relate to a very young mind, because they haven't been what would you call it, corrupted too much by the world. They haven't surrendered to the teachings and learnings of the world, which are teachings and learnings of nothing. But for many of us, we look at the world and we don't see any hope there. We don't see any point to it, but we just sort of fall into an acceptance of, oh, well, that's the way it is. And that becomes the end of our questioning. We tend to fall into a long, ritualistic lifestyle of work and sleep and weekends and earning money and all of these sorts of things that the world offers. And we tell ourselves that somewhere amongst that there is purpose, usually living our lives vicariously through our children or through other people, or looking for validation. And of course, you realize now that all of that's pointless. So journeying within is a journey wherein you've been given a guide for a very good reason. Tina will tell you, don't muck around with metaphysics. Or don't fuck around with metaphysics. And I have, it's funny, there's on Facebook, I'm on quite a few of these Course in Miracles pages, and some of them last for quite a long time with participants, and some of them seem to spring up and die away again. And then there are these other sort of peripheral pages, that are spirituality and New Age and all this sort of thing. And if you glance through some of the posts on those pages, you'll see all sorts of people, all sorts of mind expressions trying to work out what the hell's just happened to them through some sort of meditation, or what they do now, where they go next. So every now and again, I'll drop a video into one of those pages, and or a comment or something like that. And usually what I put in there is rejected or laughed at, or you know, it's like you're never ready until you're ready. But the thing that I always remember is I once met a fellow who told me about the Maharishi before I was ready to hear such things of the Maharishi. And I remember being incredibly frightened of what he was saying. And I couldn't work out why I was frightened. Couldn't work out. It terrified me. I had to get away from this guy. You know, I'd gone around to visit my friend, and he was sitting up on my friend's balcony meditating. And he invited me up there to do a transcendental meditation, and it just scared the shit out of me. And I almost ran out of that place, but I wasn't ready for it. But of course, years later, I remember that as a fond memory of like, oh man, this is truly how the mind works. This is truly the human mind. It's like I say I'm looking for something, and I tell myself I'm on a path to truth or a path to whatever. But yet when it's offered, or when something comes along that tends to represent it, I recoil from it, or I run away from it. And I don't even really know why. You know? It's because the affinity with the ego is so strong. I'm living my life through the ego. The ego wants to run away from it. The ego wants to recoil from it. The ego is terrified of truth. It doesn't know what it is, but it perceives it as a threat. And I legged it out of there as quick as could be. And that guy was probably sitting on the veranda going, what the hell's wrong with that guy? And years later, of course, I come back around to realizing it's like, man, that was exactly what I was looking for. You know, like that was the whole, took me another 25 years after that to come back around to realize that guy was actually offering me something helpful. And I have people say to me all the time, I had a lady say to me the other week, Bobby, I think her name, I think she's in our original meeting list of people that were in there. She legged it out of here once terrified. I could tell she was terrified. She didn't want to show it, but she got in the car and drove off really quick and like got the hell back home. And it was like 6 months later, she wrote to me this beautiful apology saying, I thought you were crazy. I thought you were some kind of like psychopathic lunatic, something telling me there is no world. And she said, I realized I wasn't ready to hear it then. She said, but other stuff's happened since then, you know, and it's brought it back around to a point where she can suddenly realize that what was being offered was what she was actually asking for. But that's how it is, you know. So when you ask the Holy Spirit for guidance, it's like what you think you want and what you may be actually ready for are two different things, always. The Holy Spirit knows best. You might say, I want the revelation of God, Francois. I want to remember my father. But if you could understand how much that would fry your circuits, to look upon the face of God is the most you can't comprehend it. It absolutely short circuits everything you've got. It's beyond all description in beauty and love. There's no words. There's no words. And you would, you know. So use the guidance. Anyway, that's good. I enjoyed that one. That was nice. Tina, thank you. And Anna, you have some beads there.
Yeah, I have some beads.
Okay, so I'm going to go. I'd like you to do one more recitation of the beads for Tina. Okay, all you other guys stay and join in as well. I'd like you to repeat, nothing exists on the bead, so Tina can put her full attention to that.
Okay.
Advantage of it. And then afterwards, stop recording. Okay. Angela, stay focused. Kevin, awesome. Francois, awesome. You guys are doing good. All right. I'll see you next week.
Thank you.
Are you off to? Oh, he's gone. Okay.
Oh, I gotta go get my beads.
Do you want music?
Yes.
Is that okay?
Yes. Nothing exists. 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 Nothing exists.
You can remain the same way that you. No need to come out of this. If you like, you can drop into your feel to slowly bring awareness back to your body. And only if you want to. You blink yourself. Only if you want to. You're going to close